Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a new series, a retrospective of Eugene Ormandy recordings focusing on his RCA legacy, because as we've been talking about endlessly, his Sony recordings, his Columbia recordings, which constitute the majority of his discography, are all being carefully remastered and reissued in big boxes, and there's one more to go. However, after he jumped ship from Columbia, he wound up at RCA and remade all the stuff he did for Columbia, or a lot of it, plus some things he didn't do for Columbia. And so there's some interesting titles here, and I want to run through them. And there was a Japanese RCA Ormandy edition, quite similar to the Japanese RCA Munch edition, which we've already talked about. This is going to be a little bit more comprehensive than the Munch series, because a lot of the Munch stuff was not reissued. And that came out in the big Munch box, which some of you have been begging me to do, but I'm waiting because it's sort of not available, and, we'll get to it. Don't worry, we'll get to it. But it's much more interesting to me anyway, and I hope to you as well, to go through the Ormandy RCA stuff, because hopefully at some point there will be another box or two of the RCA material, and it badly needs to be remastered. Some of these RCA recordings were very good, and a lot of them were dreadful. And so we're going to be talking about those. And then, the reason I hang on to this stuff is because someday it'll get remastered, hopefully, and reissued, and I can make the comparisons. We can see if it actually sounds better. So we're going to do like five in a throw, I think. And there are, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 discs. I mean, this is going to be a fairly extensive series, but I think one that you will find interesting. Not all of the remakes were worse than the originals. Some were. And we're going to see if we can figure it out what's what. So here's the first clump. Yes, clump number one. First, we have Tchaikovsky. Now, Ormandy was always a great Tchaikovsky conductor. Symphony No. 4 and Prokofiev's Classical Symphony. The Classical Symphony is splendid, but his Columbia one was it's the one on that Columbia disc that has the Love for Three Oranges, Lieutenant Kijé, one of the greatest recordings ever, as I've recently done a video about. So, but the Classical Symphony, he always did marvelously. I mean, I like the Columbia one because I like the whole album, but this is beautiful. The Tchaikovsky 4 is excellent. An excellent performance. This one may be a little better than the Columbia one. I mean, some of these Tchaikovsky remakes were just more vivid, and the orchestra was, I think, maybe in slightly better shape. I don't know. I mean, I don't even want to suggest that in a way, because they were terrific in both. But it's a good Tchaikovsky 4. His Tchaikovsky cycle generally on RCA was pretty terrific, and he included Symphonies 1, 2, and 3, which he never did for Columbia. So here we have this stuff, and the Prokofiev and Tchaikovsky 4. That's very, very good. Then we have Tchaikovsky 5, the great Tchaikovsky symphonies newly recorded. Well, they were then, along with the March Slav and the Capriccio Italien. Now, Ormandy's Tchaik 5 was always marvelous, and the Columbia stereo one was one of his really early Columbia stereos. So it was good to get a remake, and heaven knows they play it just as well. The March Slav was something that Ormandy always did marvelously, but his Sony recording is a knockout. It's just one of those blockbuster recordings that he cut loose on, and this one can't quite match it. And the Capriccio Italien is always very nice. I mean, it's lovely, so there's nothing not to like. Then we get this sucker, the Rachmaninoff Symphony No. 2. Well, Ormandy famously did the Rachmaninoff Symphony No. 2 for Columbia with all of the legitimate, by the way, cuts that Rachmaninoff permitted in the symphony. Frankly, some of them are very damaging. They really are. I think the chopping up the development section of the first movement doesn't help. I mean, the scherzo's missing so much good music on its repetition. The finale gets whacked. I like the complete work much better than the cut version, although Ormandy's recording of the cut version for Columbia was stunning. Now, this is the complete work. He decided to restore all the cuts. People say he wasn't terribly comfortable with it, and he didn't really want to do it that way. I don't know if I accept that. I mean, he may have had his reservations, but the bottom line is he did it. He did it with a will. It's a beautiful performance of the Second Symphony. It really is. And you also get, as a coupling, which it doesn't tell you here, well, here it is, they added it down here. Yes, Scriabin, the Poem of Ecstasy, which is why we need to have these things remastered, because it's a gorgeous performance of the Poem of Ecstasy, but boy, could it use a remastering. It's not badly recorded, but it's not splendid by any stretch of the imagination. So I am hoping, in order to evaluate the voluptuosity of the Poem of Ecstasy, we will have an opportunity to hear this in a good remastering at some point in the not-too-distant future, if civilization doesn't end first. Prokofiev Symphony No. 5, and Peter and the Wolf with David Bowie. Well, the Peter and the Wolf is delightful. I remember it came out of one of those LPs that was made of some sort of like orange plastic or something. It was rather bizarre looking and kind of, interesting, and it was very plastic. And the Fifth Symphony, well, this one I like better than his Columbia recording. I really do. It's a little bit slower, a little bit heavier, but it's fabulously well played, and you hear more. It sounds more like what the symphony is supposed to sound like, I think, than the earlier Columbia recording. So this I always enjoyed. That was good to get. And last, but certainly not least, we have Pictures at an Exhibition and the Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony, this time with Virgil Fox. Now the previous Saint-Saëns organ symphony on Columbia is one of the major recordings of the work. It's gorgeous. This is very good also. It really is. I'm wondering if it's a let's see, electronic organ thing. I can't remember, because one of them was, one of them wasn't. I don't remember. Anyway, it's a very good performance. Again, it could use a good remastering. Pictures in an Exhibition is the opener. This was an Ormandy specialty, and this is a very, very good performance. But his Columbia recording was the one. I mean, it's the reference, and it's phenomenal, and it was marvelously well recorded for its day. And this one can't match it. I mean, it tries. It tries, and there's nothing wrong with it. Again, but he's competing with himself, and that was you should never have to compete with yourself. Once you do something right and it's wonderful, you should be able to take a step back and say, okay, it's enough. But I'm sure RCA wanted one, because the Columbia one was like, everybody was thrilled with it, and it was doing really well, and they wanted one of their own to compete with it, and Ormandy was more than happy to oblige. I think that's a very silly move, but he did it. And so there you have it, the first 5. Some new things and some old things? Yes, well, some new things like the uncut Rachmaninoff 2 and other goodies, and we're going to have a good time going through this stuff. We really are, because there's just lots and lots of fun repertoire that Ormandy did, and some real surprises. I've done actually a video about the unusual Ormandy from this series, and those recordings will come up again in the context of the overall thing, but things like Penderecki's Utrania and lots of Charles Ives and stuff that nobody else was touching, and that Ormandy could be counted on to do. He was adventurous in his way, of his type. But and adventurous in a way which was very, very rewarding, because you knew that you would get the Ormandy Philadelphia treatment, which meant first class, absolutely first class. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.